Your life isn't just a series of random events. It wasn't written by chance or dictated by fate. It's being shaped and reshaped right now by something far more profound. Imagine a field of consciousness so vast, so ancient, that it holds the memory of everything your soul has ever done, felt, or dreamed. This isn't just a poetic idea, it's a reality that mystics and spiritual seekers have whispered about for centuries. There's a place, if you can even call it a place, that contains every thought, every intention, every karmic imprint of every being that has ever lived. It's a field so silent that most people never notice it, so subtle that it's often overlooked. Yet it's always there, just beyond the veil of ordinary awareness. You've felt it before. Maybe it was in the stillness of meditation, in the strange clarity of déjà vu, or in a dream so vivid it felt more real than waking life. The ancients called it Akasha. Mystics knew it intuitively. Today we call it the Akashic Records. But don't mistake this for some New Age fantasy. This is the blueprint behind your reality, and once you understand it, you'll never see yourself or your life the same way again. Have you ever felt like your life is part of a story you don't fully understand? Like you've been dropped into the middle of a chapter with no memory of what came before? That feeling isn't your imagination, it's your intuition. Deep down, something in you knows that your soul has lived far more than just this one life. It knows there's a record of all those lives and that they didn't simply vanish when you were born into this one. That record has a name. It's been whispered about for thousands of years across continents, cultures, and traditions, the Akashic Records. But let's be clear, the Akashic Records aren't a book. They're not physical. They're not locked away in some ancient building or buried beneath the earth. They exist in a dimension beyond time and space, a non-physical field of consciousness that functions like a spiritual database. Imagine a vibrational archive that stores not just your actions, but your thoughts, emotions, intentions, every decision you've ever made, every lesson you were meant to learn, every lifetime you've lived. And it's not just about you. This field contains the records of every soul, every experience, every moment in existence. This isn't some exclusive concept reserved for the chosen few. This is the terrain of consciousness itself. The term Akasha comes from the Sanskrit word meaning ether or spirit. In ancient Indian cosmology, Akasha was considered the fifth element, beyond earth, water, fire, and air. It represented the subtle energetic substance from which all things emerge. To the ancients, Akasha wasn't just an abstract idea. It was the invisible thread connecting all of existence, the field through which divine intelligence expresses itself. And the Akashic Records. They're what that field remembers. Versions of this idea exist in almost every mystical tradition. The Hebrews spoke of the Book of Life. The ancient Egyptians believed in a Hall of Records. In Islam, there's the Alawh al-Mahfuz, the preserved tablet that records all things. Even in modern Western esotericism, thinkers like Helena Blavatsky and Rudolf Steiner spoke of a spiritual memory field that transcends the limits of our senses. They weren't inventing something new, they were remembering something ancient. If you've ever wondered why some people seem to be born with wisdom far beyond their years, or why you've experienced unexplainable fears, uncanny abilities, or deep emotional reactions that feel older than this lifetime, you're not crazy. You're sensing echoes from the records. You are more than your current circumstances. You are a soul carrying layers of experience. And those layers aren't random, they're patterns, part of a larger curriculum your soul agreed to explore. But here's the thing, until you become aware of those patterns, they keep playing out unconsciously, lifetime after lifetime. This is where the Akashic Records become more than just an abstract concept. They become a key, a map, a compass pointing back to yourself, because within them lie answers. not just about who you were, but about who you're becoming. There are insights waiting to be uncovered, lessons waiting to be integrated, and a truth that most people never get close to. Your purpose isn't something you invent, it's something you remember. Some truths can't be fully shared here, but they're too important to keep hidden. If you're ready to dive deeper, check out Insights Academy through the link in the description. You'll also receive a free digital copy of the Kabbalion while it's still available. Here's the thing most people don't realize: the Akashic Records aren't off limits, they're just off radar. Most people never even try to access them, not because they're incapable, but because they've been taught to believe it's impossible. They've been told that knowledge lives in books, that authority resides in institutions, and that answers must come from outside themselves. But the records say otherwise. They say the highest knowledge isn't learned, it's remembered. You don't need to be a guru or a psychic to access this wisdom. You just need to get quiet enough to hear what's already been echoing inside you. The Akashic field doesn't favor the elite. It responds to intention, to sincerity, to readiness. So the question isn't, can you access the records? The question is, what happens when you do? Long before the term Akashic Records was ever coined, there were those who knew not in theory, but through direct experience. Visionaries, mystics, seers, and sages touched something beyond the veil and brought back messages written not in ink, but in light. They didn't call it a record because what they encountered wasn't language. It was truth in its purest, most vibrational form. Across continents and cultures, they whispered about a place, if you could even call it that, where the memories of the soul were kept, not guarded by walls, but by frequency. The Vedic rishis of ancient India spoke of Akasha as the primal substance of all reality, the origin of all form and thought. In their worldview, nothing was ever truly lost. It simply returned to Akasha like a ripple folding back into the ocean. Tibetan mystics referred to this same field as the mind stream, a flow of consciousness that transcends individual lifetimes. The Druids, the Egyptians, the Gnostics, the Mayans, they all had their own names for it. Different languages, different symbols, but the same, knowing that there exists an invisible domain that remembers everything. So what happened to this knowledge? It didn't disappear, it was dismantled, marginalized, and rebranded as superstition by institutions that feared its implications. Because if the soul has memory, then the self isn't defined by nationality, religion, or even biology. If the records are real, then authority must be internal, not imposed. And that's a dangerous idea to systems built on control. During colonization, many indigenous cultures that held oral traditions of soul memory were forcibly silenced. Sacred ceremonies, ones that opened intuitive channels to Akasha, were outlawed, mocked, or replaced. Ancient libraries were burned, pagan practices were demonized, and spiritual histories were rewritten. It was all part of the same effort to sever humanity's connection to the knowledge that lives beyond the five senses. Even today, in the age of rationalism, the idea of the Akashic Records is often dismissed as pseudoscience or fantasy, yet those same critics can't explain why children remember past lives, why people who've never met share identical dreams, or why ancient texts across civilizations describe eerily similar experiences of soul memory. It's not that the evidence doesn't exist, it's that it doesn't fit the narrative. A society built on consumption and obedience cannot function if its people start asking, "Who was I before this?" or "What if the story I was told isn't the full story?" So instead, you were given a new story, one that said, you are your name, your job, your race, your gender, that your past starts with your birth certificate and ends with your death certificate, that everything else is just a fairy tale. But beneath that story, the older one has been quietly waiting. It's encoded in dreams you can't explain. It's whispered during moments of silence when the noise of the world fades, and you can finally hear your own knowing. This isn't about replacing religion or claiming secret knowledge. It's about remembrance. It's about reclaiming a truth that was taken not just by violence, but by ridicule, distraction, and forgetting. The Akashic Records are not new. They are ancient beyond comprehension. What's new is that more people are waking up to them again. And maybe that's why you're here, not to learn something brand new, but to remember something timeless, something your ancestors once knew before it was torn from their tongues, something your soul has been trying to show you all along. Because when you realize that history isn't just written in books, but in energy, in frequency, in you, you begin to reclaim the story no one else can write for you. Here's the truth: you don't need a library card to access the Akashic Records. You don't need permission from an institution, a degree, or a spiritual hierarchy. The records were never meant to be owned or guarded. They were meant to be felt, remembered, and lived. And this is what makes them different from every other source of knowledge. They don't respond to intellect, they respond to frequency. You don't read them with your eyes. You align with them. You tune into them like a radio dial. Your awareness shifts into a state where the static clears and the signal becomes audible. People have been doing this for thousands of years, even when they didn't have a name for it. It happens in deep meditation, in altered states of consciousness, in dreams that seem to show other lifetimes or forgotten memories. It can happen spontaneously during grief, intense joy, or moments of complete stillness. But the access point is always the same: presence. You can't force your way into the records. You soften into them. You surrender into an awareness so still, so honest, that your energy matches the frequency of truth itself. Mystics and sages often describe the records as a vibrational field. That's because what they contain isn't written in sentences or paragraphs. It's not a language you're used to. It's knowing. It's resonance. Some people describe seeing the records as a massive library or an ancient temple filled with scrolls and light. Others experience it as colors, sounds, or symbols that don't translate into words but make total sense emotionally. And that's the key: the records don't speak to your logical brain. They speak directly to your soul. Modern spiritual practitioners have developed methods for consciously entering this space. Some use guided meditations or prayers like the Pathway Prayer, popularized by Linda Howe. Others access the records through automatic writing, allowing the subconscious to translate what the conscious mind can't yet perceive. Breathwork, plant medicine, lucid dreaming, and astral projection have also served as gateways for those prepared to explore the deeper terrain of consciousness. But here's the thing: no single method is universal. The technique is less important than the intention. Intention is everything. If you approach the records looking for proof, control, or entertainment, you'll likely find nothing at all. But if you approach with reverence, curiosity, and a willingness to be changed, the field responds. And it's not always comfortable. The records don't flatter your ego. They show you patterns, truths, loops you've repeated across lifetimes, and wounds you've carried longer than your own name. But they also show you your power, untapped, ancient, waiting to be remembered. They offer clarity in places where you've been confused for years, and they whisper the same message over and over again: you are more than you've been told. Here's the wild part: many people have already accessed the records without even realizing it. That intuitive knowing that saved you from a bad decision, that strange moment when you knew what someone would say before they said it, that unexplainable pull toward a place, a person, or a path. These aren't coincidences. They're echoes, glimpses through the veil. Your soul is always trying to speak through the noise of a world designed to keep you distracted. But accessing the Akashic Records isn't about escaping this world. It's about embodying your full self in this world. It's not a way to bypass reality. It's a way to see it clearly, past the illusion, past the conditioning, down to the root. When you access the records, you don't just remember who you were. You remember who you came here to be. And that kind of memory isn't passive. It moves you. It changes how you walk through life, how you respond to challenges, how you see others, and how you tell your own story. Because once you've stood inside the infinite and seen your place in it, nothing can convince you that you're small, broken, or powerless ever again. You didn't come here empty. You didn't arrive on this planet as a blank slate randomly thrown into a chaotic world. You came with a blueprint, a soul-level design shaped by lifetimes of experience, intention, and consequence. The Akashic Records hold that blueprint. They don't just contain information about who you've been. They map out the energetic residue of those experiences, what some call karma, what others call soul memory, but what is at its core the spiritual architecture of your evolution. Karma has often been misunderstood. It's not punishment. It's not some cosmic retribution for doing something wrong. Karma is memory, it's momentum, it's energy echoing forward, seeking resolution, balance, and growth. Think of it like an unfinished chord that needs to be completed. If you betrayed someone in one life, you might feel a deep need to protect others in this one. If you silenced your truth for years, you might now feel compelled to speak, even if your voice shakes. These aren't random traits. They're threads, emotional and energetic patterns woven through lifetimes, creating continuity in your soul's story. And then there are soul contracts. These aren't rigid scripts, but agreements made at the soul level before incarnation. They're arrangements to meet certain people, face particular challenges, or experience specific lessons. That toxic relationship, that impossible parent, or that mentor who appeared just when you needed them most, these may not be accidents. They could be part of a deeper contract, a mutual agreement to catalyze growth in each other, no matter how difficult the process. The Akashic Records allow us to glimpse these contracts not so we can escape the pain, but so we can understand its purpose. This is why the records aren't just repositories of information. They're mirrors of transformation. When you access your soul's blueprint, you begin to see your struggles differently. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this teaching me?" You begin to notice the repeating cycles, the same lessons showing up in different disguises, the same kind of heartbreak, the same fear, the same self-sabotage. And when you see the pattern, you gain the power to rewrite it. Because awareness breaks the cycle, and choice once made with full consciousness becomes the seed of transformation. But it's not just about healing wounds. The records also reveal your gifts. We often focus on pain when we talk about past lives, but wisdom travels too. Talents, strengths, and even spiritual abilities can cross over. That inexplicable pull toward healing, teaching, or creating. It might not be new. It might be something your soul has been mastering for lifetimes. The records help you remember not only where the pain started, but where the power lives. Understanding your soul blueprint also dissolves comparison. Once you realize that everyone is on a unique evolutionary path, the need to match someone else's timeline disappears. You begin to honor your own process. You stop rushing. You stop blaming. You start trusting that your challenges aren't obstacles, they're activations. The Akashic Records reveal the soul's curriculum. And once you see that even your biggest setbacks begin to feel like sacred assignments. But here's the most liberating truth of all: your blueprint is fluid. The past may shape the present, but it doesn't trap it. Karma isn't a life sentence. Soul contracts can be rewritten. Patterns can be broken. This isn't about determinism, it's about awareness. The records don't chain you to a fate, they offer you a map. But you still choose the path, you still carry the pen. And in every moment you are either repeating an old pattern or initiating a new cycle entirely. So when you ask, "What is my purpose?" you're not waiting for the answer to descend from the sky. You're being invited to remember what your soul already knows. The blueprint has always been inside you. The records are simply the key to decoding it. For most people, the idea of the Akashic Records sounds poetic, at best something belonging to the world of mystics and metaphysics, a comforting metaphor for those who believe in something more. But what if it's not just a metaphor? What if what ancient sages described as a spiritual library is something modern science is only now beginning to glimpse through the lens of energy fields, quantum theory, and consciousness studies that challenge everything we thought we knew about reality? There's a reason mainstream science has largely ignored the Akashic Records. They don't fit neatly within the materialist worldview. You can't put the records under a microscope, measure them with a ruler, or quantify them in a lab. But consciousness itself, your thoughts, dreams, memories, can't be measured either. And yet, you know they exist. The records may not be physical, but neither is the internet signal that lets you read this now. Unseen doesn't mean unreal. Physicists have long known that reality isn't as solid as it appears. At the quantum level, everything is energy, vibrating, interconnected, dynamic. What we perceive as form is just a dense arrangement of frequencies. Information, it turns out, may be the foundation of the universe. Not matter, not even energy, information. This is where the idea of a field of stored data becomes more than mysticism. It becomes a viable model of reality. The late Ervin Laszlo, a systems philosopher and two-time Nobel Peace Prize nominee, introduced the concept of the Akashic field as a universal information field that underlies all of creation. According to his theory, the universe isn't a random accident, but a coherent system driven by information stored in the Akashic field. He didn't pull this idea from ancient texts. He found parallels between cutting-edge physics and the timeless wisdom of spiritual traditions. To him, the Akashic Records weren't a fantasy, they were a scientific inevitability waiting to be understood. Then there's the holographic universe theory, championed by scientists like David Bohm and Carl Pribram. It suggests that the universe functions like a hologram where each part contains the whole. That means all information is encoded everywhere at all times. Every cell in your body holds the imprint of your entire genetic code. Every point in the field could potentially hold the memory of every moment, every life, every possibility. Sound familiar? These theories don't prove the Akashic Records in the traditional sense, but they do open the door. They challenge the lie we've been told that we are isolated, separate beings in a dead, mechanical universe. Instead, they point to something far more intimate, a cosmos woven with intelligence, memory, and interconnection. A field that remembers, a universe that knows itself through you. Even near-death experiences, once dismissed as hallucinations, now offer clues. Many who return describe a realm of knowing where their entire life unfolds before them, not in judgment but in understanding. Some report seeing not just their lives, but the impact of their actions on others rippling out like echoes. That level of awareness, that panoramic perspective, is consistent with what spiritual practitioners describe when accessing the records. It's not storytelling, it's a transmission of memory beyond time. And then there's the mystery of intuition. How does a mother sense her child is in danger from miles away? How do some people just know when something isn't right before it happens? These phenomena hint at something deeper than logic. They suggest we're already connected to a field of information much larger than ourselves. That we're not tapping into guesses, we're tapping into memory. And maybe that's the most important part. The Akashic Records don't ask you to believe in something new. They ask you to remember something old. To consider that perhaps, just perhaps, the universe isn't cold and random, but conscious and intentional. That your thoughts, your choices, your very essence aren't fleeting moments lost to time, but part of a living record that holds it all. This is where your journey begins. Your story isn't finished. Your patterns aren't final. And your soul is far from broken. The Akashic Records don't exist to predict your future. They exist to remind you that you are still the author. You always were. and the next chapter, it's waiting for you to write it. If this resonated with you, let us know in the comments. And remember, you're not just living your story, you're remembering it.